welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of many things, but in particular, an absolutely gorgeous novella. I am so excited to tell all of my friends about this and tell all of our patrons. It is just such a good read, and it packs such a punch for an efficiently slim little volume. There's just so much good stuff in there. So welcome to the show. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen. Really appreciate being here. And thank you so much for your kind words about Audition for the Fox. That is my debut book. It is a novella. It is coming from Tachyon Publications. It'll be published September 16th, 2025. And my name is Martin Cahill. I am a writer of a ton of short fiction. I've done a bunch of nonfiction. I've worked in various IPs like Batman and Critical Role and other D&D themed wonders. I've Audition for the Fox is my debut book, and I'm just super duper excited to be here. I've been in publishing for a very long time. I've worn many hats of many styles and varieties, but I've done a little bit of everything. I've just finished a 6-year run at Erewhon Books, which is an imprint at Kensington, specializing in science fiction, fantasy, horror, and everything in between, championing diverse stories from diverse authors in all walks of life, and I think doing a pretty darn good job of it. And yeah, so I'm just very excited to be here to talk about Audition for the Fox. Do you want me to give a little pitch on that, or we'll just kind of get into that?
Absolutely. Yeah, give us a little, give us the elevator pitch.
Fantastic. So my elevator pitch is it's a very long elevator for a very tall building because that's how long it takes. And I always say, I'm like, oh, it's like here's a one sentence thing. And my wife is like, semicolons don't count in the one sentence. She's like, it's a very long sentence. So I'll do my best. Um, I recently described this book. I was at the American Library Show and people were asking for something pithy. And I reduced it to a one-line description of it's a book that kind of asks, what if Terry Pratchett arm wrestled with Aesop from Aesop's Fables? But it didn't really matter because Nevo, the writer of the Singing Hill cycle, was behind each of them, stealing their wallets and running away very quickly. So it's a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of fantasy, a big dose in terms of folklore and histories and storytelling styles. It is the story of a young girl. Her name is Nesi. Nesi is in a world, a secondary fantasy world, where if you are either a child of the gods, if you have divine blood in you, or through crazy random happenstance, you have some sort of divinity in your blood, you are taken as a young child and asked to live at these temples scattered throughout the land, where you can be safeguarded until you are old enough to gain the patronage and chaperonage of one of these gods in the world. There are 99 of them. They are known as the Pillars of Heaven, aka the forces that keep the universe standing and sturdy. And Nesi has flunked out with 96 out of 99 of those gods. At some point, this story became about like the millennial job crisis. I feel qualified, but no one really wants to work. But the long and short of it is, again, this is a very long one sentence, but at some point the elevator got stopped and we have to buzz for a technician. But the long and short of it is, any person who has this divinity and is not able to get patronage is at risk because people could use their blood for, horrible magics and rituals, or they could possibly have power they don't know how to control. And so Nesi has 3 remaining choices, and in a fit of anxiety, she chooses to go with the Fox of Tricks, whose name is Sidane, and the fox. Nesi's gone through a lot of different trials. A lot of these first auditions are relatively simple, and then they would become harder in scope. The Fox just has one simple directive, which is to throw Nesi back in time to quote unquote see what happens. She wakes up at a time when her country was under occupation, and the fox says, according to history, one of the revolutions that begins to overthrow this occupation starts here, so make sure that happens. And she goes, well, hasn't it already happened? And they go, I don't know. Did it? And that's where the story starts.
Nice. We've ridden up the Empire State Building elevator, and now we're at the top and
Up and
talk
down.
about
I
the
mean,
book. Yeah.
thank you for indulging me in this very long elevator trip.
It was so good though. And my first question is about like how you see this project, this novella fitting into the things that you've written already, how your previous experiences have shaped your approach to writing this one. I'm particularly interested in how writing IP is different from writing your own stories, and if those influence each other at all, teach you things that you bring into the other sphere.
Yeah, that's, I mean, great question. I think starting from the back first, writing IP is a lot of fun. And the thing that I have found is the largest differentiator aside from, I mean, there's always going to be somebody who's like checking the lore and making did you say anything that's inaccurate or is someone you're writing wildly out of character? But with IP work, a lot of the time, they're going to give you your own boundaries. They're going to say, for Batman, for example, when I wrote the Batman thing with this writing team of Kira Arsenault Rivera and Catherine Valenci, they said to the three of us, hey, here's sort of we need Batman, we need Zatanna is going to be in there. You can't use the Joker, you can't use Harley Quinn. Two-Face gave us whole roster of things that like we can't use, and but we're like, we encourage you to explore the magical side of things with Zatanna. We encourage you to explore their relationship because Batman's incredibly secular. He's not, a magical guy. Um, but the number one rule of Batman coming down from DC was essentially um, Batman is not an asshole. Um, they were like, he can be grim, he can be, intelligent, he can be maybe brusque, but he's not a jerk. And I was like, that's fair. Um, and so with a lot of IP, what's nice about them giving you boundaries and walls is that you are then free to explore, almost like a theater exercise. It's like, hey, explore the space we got, right? So, and for Critical Role, for example, I wrote a short story for them for their Vox Machina Stories Untold back in March, and they were like, hey, we want you to write about this magical tree. And I said, no problem. And then from there, they were kind of like, here's what we're looking for, but otherwise, go for it. You know the important points to hit, and we give you free reign to make up this character or do this or do that. But like as long as you can hit A through F, everything else is yours. So it's in that way of like, oh, when I have limitations, it almost feels like you've got an additional a little bit more like a leg up in terms of the creative process because you sort of by knowing what it is you can't or should not be doing, you can focus more energy on the stuff you know you can do or get away with. And it's again, if you all of a sudden veer off and it's like, you know, I don't know, again, like Batman starts wearing like I don't know one of those big woolly fuzzy hats that I don't know that was the first image I thought of. They're like, oh, Batman doesn't wear hats. You're like, oh, right, gone, deleted. And I mean, I definitely think that creative restriction helps in the larger creative process, especially uh, with Audition for the Fox, because I think I was sort of operating under the constraint of the size of a novella. And because this story, it started as a very long short story, then it became a very short novelette, and then it became a very longer story. And eventually, I had a friend who was looking for submissions, and he was like, "Do you have anything novella shaped?" And I was like, I think this thing needs to be longer. And I mean, to make this thing a pure novel in terms of word count, it would have only been another 10,000 words. But being constrained to 40K as like a rough point allowed for me to be like, working with all the other muscles of the creative process, what needs to be accomplished, what's all the world building thing, like all the other work, it helped to create a shape that I could really like maybe it's not a big circle, but it's a smaller circle and every single part of it is colored in. Like it's to say like, it's not like a rough sketch. It's like maybe it's a smaller piece, but I'm using all of the space I've got as opposed to maybe some like empty pockets of air. But like, we don't really need that part. So hopefully like it is just a incredibly like potent little guy is the hope.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real potent little guy. And that is my second question, actually. You provided a beautiful lead in that it is such an expansive world that you suggest in this really, efficient space of a novella. And so my question is, what is your approach to world building and how much of what you do in your pre-writing ends up on the page?
That's a good question. With pre-writing, there was a lot that this book had that either got reutilized in its final form, or just never came back because it wasn't relevant. The story started, this story started with a 5,000 word scene that was just Nesi and the fox talking. It was just the two of them bouncing back and forth and me getting a sense of voices and a sense of like the fox and what is their whole deal, like what kind of trickster are they, and like are they just sassy or do we have actual character there? And um so a lot of that sort of went into the overall cauldron of what made them who they are. um and same thing with Nesi, same thing with like Ren and Una and Tayor, like all of that kind of like percolates and percolates over time. um so in terms of like I mean, and there's a whole list. I have a list of all of my pillars written down, beginning to go into some other fiddly bits for possible future Nesi and Fox stories, which would be great. Um, but yeah, I think in terms of world building, I love world building with all my heart. I think that it is such an important tool in the toolbox that I think people don't always think all the way through, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know, like I've started writing like a little like newsletter every week of like, hey, world building Wednesdays, what should we be talking about here? And like I was mentoring somebody recently who's a young, like 22-year-old undergrad who just graduated and like his first novel from his creative writing course. And like we were talking about that because, he was writing some big fantasy thing, and I was like, this is great. I love what you're doing here. We gotta tighten this up. Because to me, like the way that I think about world building, if building a novel, if building a story is like an architectural project, if you're making a building, to me, world building is the scaffolding that is going to contain that story. It is going to help give it shape. It is going to help give it uh, width and breadth and height. Like it's going to deepen the structure of this whole thing, and it is going to contain the whole thing. Um, to me, like really successful world building in a novel or a story is you have just enough room to work with that when you are finished with this building, if you're draping over the final bits of it, it all hangs very concisely. Like the scaffolding has created a structure strong enough to support your ideas. But when somebody looks at that building, they're not going to see any of it. They're just going to be able to be so immersed in the actual created product that they shouldn't notice any of the other framework around it. Um, which is the hope, because anything else, like I love this world. I really, really want to keep writing in it. I'm working on a game, did like a TCRPG design for it a little bit. Like as like a possible pre-order thing, which could be fun. I can get into that a little bit. But like I have somebody who her name is Saya over at Every Book a Doorway, and she read the book, she really enjoyed it, and we've been sort of talking back and forth interview style about it. And she was also very happy with the world building, and she was like, "How did you keep yourself from going so hog wild?" And I think it just goes back to that scaffolding idea of if there's too much scaffolding, if you're indulging in the, all of the constructive material, then your reader goes, "Oh, well, that's not the book. That's not the plot. That's not the story." Um, and so it's really about like, especially in the constrained novella format. And part of this is also editing and working with my editor Jamie and my previous editor Brent, who was originally looking at this and helped a lot. A lot of that is just editing and shaving down until, you know, the world building is informing the story being told. And every sentence, every bit of world building in there is doing the work it needs to keep that story and structure as sound as possible. So, you know, even like in the beginning of the book, Nesi is sort of trying to figure out where in time she is, and she notices a few different kinds of peoples and cultures around her from other parts of this mega continent that she lives on. And even for me, I was kind of like, oh, like I've got two sentences to like illustrate other cultures in this world, and so I have to be very, very clear and decisive about that. Even if I could, I know there's so much more there, but like, so yeah, I mean, that's part of the fun is also where do you stress detail? Where do you kind of hint at things? Um, little bits and asides. Like there's a reference to something called the hairline, HARE. And this wonderful blogger friend, Saya, was like, wait, are the longitude and latitude of this planet named after the gods? And I was like, yeah, probably. And she was like, "Ah." So, she was very excited. But that's a very long answer to your wonderful question.
That's a great answer. And it occurs to me as you are talking that building a really deep and expansive world has as much to do with what you don't show as what you do, like in terms of that scaffolding. Like if you are hinting at much, much more than the eye can actually see in that moment, that gives your world the weight of history. So that's
Yeah.
really interesting. Mhm.
Yeah, that's the hope, right? Is that especially in this shorter format, if you can, because as a reader, I really like being given a little homework. I like working to think and like think through things and like letting my imagination kind of go a little wild. And, you know, my parents very sweetly have been, because the book sort of just throws you into it. And I like that writing style. I like writing that style. As a reader, I really enjoy, learning to trust the author and learning how to read the book based off how the author has written it. Because everything should be done with intention is like the final product. Again, I can point to like any paragraph and hopefully be able to tell you, oh, this is the purpose of that. But my parents very sweetly to all their friends have been like, it's a good book. We like it. Give it a few pages. After a few pages, Marty really kind of begins to explain stuff, but he throws in the deep end a little bit. And I'm like, all right, thanks, guys. But yeah, it's a lot of what is not said. What do we not focus on? Um, and again, hopefully that's part of the fun and the enticement of like a sequel or the next book or other stories being told in this world. Um, there's a lot. The fox has annoyed a lot of their siblings. So
Yep. So that does bring me to a question about our fox, Sidane. They're so cool.
oh, thank you.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed your take on the trickster. It's a very, I keep using this word expansive, but it keeps being relevant, like an expansive notion of what a trickster can be. So can you talk about building that character and sort of how it maybe relates to folklore and sort of any did you do like research in folklore? Like how did you build your trickster?
Yeah, totally. And thank you for the question because I love citing. I love my fox. They have a lot of facets to them, and I know that there's still a lot more to be mined from them if they'll talk to me, which is part of the problem of writing someone like them is because I maybe I do know that this is part of my trickster, and it's not from any folklore. It is from my best friend, whose name is Matt. We became best friends in college, and I love Matt. He's my best friend. He's like my unofficial fourth brother. Um, And if he doesn't want to talk about something, he will absolutely get you to talk about something else, and you will not have noticed until it's been like 20 minutes. And he does have a very trickster-like quality of guiding you where he wants you to go without you realizing what's happening. And I only know that because I've known him for half my life, so I know his tricks. But so all to say that sometimes Sidane in my head is, I'm like, whatever happened between you and the bat? And Sidane's like, it's not worth it. Let me tell you, So with, with building the trickster out, I mean, a lot of this story and a lot of like Sidane in general and like what Nesi is trying to narratively gain from the Fox is, what's the point of having a trickster? Like if every like building on my other pillars, you have like the crane of mothers and the swan of love and the dove of health and the beaver of homes and the ant of diligence and you have domains, and there are like elemental domains, and there are metaphysical domains, and there are spiritual or emotional domains. And there's a part of me that's like, I can see how all of you guys are useful. Like I can see where, this would come from. And for me, a part of it was really trying to like nail down the point of a trickster. And, you know, again, like you've got all sorts of trickster folks throughout history. I mean, Loki, Nancy, coyotes. I pulled from a lot of different cultures in terms of just general vibes. Like the hope was never to, the goal is to never appropriate anybody or any culture, and to, if there is someone I'm inspired by directly, to go to those sources, make sure I'm doing the best work I can, and, addressing those things with respect. And, but like the Fox is sort of a little bit of everybody in some ways. It's taking that archetype and really like getting down to the nitty-gritty of, what do you solve? What do you, if you're here, if people are worshiping you, if people are asking for help, how are you helping? And, there's a lot of theories and things bandied about in the book. Either Nesi's thinking of it or Sidane sort of spouting things. And I believe them most of the time. I think, there's a sense of, again, like in this conversation with this reviewer, Saya, we've sort of been going back and forth about the idea of a tricksters operate outside of the binary. Tricksters operate outside the law, right? Like they're and tricksters exist as sort of a like fundamental opposing force to injustice most of the time. Like there's this sense of, I can tweak the wolf's nose, or I can go and do this because you can't, or like I'm gonna go answer for this, or I'm gonna help somebody feel a little more humble than they should. They're like a bit of an operator of the cosmos in terms of balancing scales. Um, and granted, the fox is not always right. We must look through the lens of, they are a cosmic force, and they are also a person, and they are petty, and they are vain, and there are things that, there are stories out there that I know of, like, again, in my brain, where the fox is not the hero, and sometimes, as they say in the book, sometimes being the joke is just as good a lesson as making someone else the joke. Like it could be a humbling thing for the trickster to be reminded that they too, if they offend the cosmic forces in balance, like they'll be put back into balance too. So Sidane, like, you know, there are, and again, given the tone of the book, like I did want a lot of the focus to be on, you know, what can this trickster provide that is going to help in a situation? And I know as I was writing this, and again, like I wrote a letter to booksellers months ago when I was when this was first starting to come out, and I said, like, right off the bat, I was like, guys, I am so sorry this is relevant. I did not want it to be relevant. I started writing this in 2018. I, for the love of God, did not want this to be the kind of thing that reflected the current world. And yet, there is a part of me that like I feel very powerless most days. I know that's not true. I know that there's a lot I can do. I know that especially as a straight white dude in the world, like the amount of privilege and things that I have on my plate regardless is always true. And yet I know that there's this powerlessness I feel that a lot of people feel, I think, that in a world where so many big things are happening, so many awful things are happening that feel both out of control and that it's not something you can touch, but it's almost like this ephemeral fire sort of burning around you at all times. I think something I was really, really beginning to explore in the final drafts of this was like, hey, like like it says in the dedication, this one's for the goofballs. Like I'm a goofball. I really try not to be sometimes, but I know that I am, and part of how I kind of make sense of it is that helping people laugh and smile and reminding people of good things or doing what I can to alleviate burden or in any way, shape, or form I can help um, is valuable. That there is some worth to the idea that um, yeah, maybe you're not a god, maybe you can't move mountains, but you can help lift that pail of water for somebody. You can crack a joke, while you're all in this horrible situation. Um, which isn't to say that like laughter's a good medicine, but it's not like a solution. It's not, it's not a, it's not what, I'm gonna butcher this word, panacea of like a panacea. Um, but there, yeah, like it's not a cure-all, but it can help lessen hurt and pain, or at least remind people that no one here is alone. Um, and so, yeah, like I think with Saidin and Nesi kind of begin to inform each other and teaching each other. And I think in building them, but yeah, I think in constructing Saidin and like their backstory that we see and other little bits and bobs of them and their family, like it was important for me to highlight that like there's a story in the book, the fox and the turtle, which I won't spoil, but like every one of those stories kind of like is showing a different aspect of the trickster. And it's like, hey, sometimes Sidane is just a little scamp. Sometimes they're a little scamp and they're gonna do something stupid or funny because they think it's funny. And it's mostly harmless. But maybe it's just to make them laugh. Or hey, maybe they are not doing anything at all, but like if you come at them, they're gonna teach you a lesson. And sometimes they actively say, hey, you're messing up the cosmic balance, and my brother's being a dick, so I'm gonna go take care of that. And it was important for me to kind of show those aspects on sort of like the cosmic scale in this world. And then when it came to Nezi's story, as someone who doesn't have that power, like she has some divinity in her, but for the most part, that's just her great grandfather, the Bison. I was describing Nezi the other day. I was like, if she was a D&D character, she'd have like a wisdom of like 9 and a constitution score of like 19. Like she's sturdy. She can take a hit, but she still has a lot to learn. So this book is sort of approaching that wisdom of humor, that wisdom of lightness. And, I think a lot of comedy, the hope is to say, hey, I see this way. Do you see it this way? Or, well, here's what I've seen in the world. And boy, isn't this goofy as hell. And helping people to at least take a second to breathe and go, it is silly. Or, something like that. But
Yeah.
I've gone on too long.
I feel like it really does sort of get at that humor or laughter can be the great leveler, right? Because it's going to lift up those who are trodden down or marginalized or precarious in some way, and it might humble the powerful. And like, yeah, Sidane does that to themselves sometimes. They absolutely humble themselves occasionally, but they're also really good at humbling people around them. And that does, I think, bring us to the themes of Nesi's journey and the ideas about resistance. Because something you've already hinted at, I think, that you have learned and that Nesi also learns is that feeling powerless doesn't mean being powerless. And there are multiple modes of resistance. And yeah, you've already mentioned that you did not expect it to be as timely as it is, and I am sorry that it is. But being that it is, gosh, where was the question in all that? I forgot to put the bit with the question mark at the end of like my comments, but yeah, what do you think of that?
Hey, no, hey, I love it. Let's dive in. It is timely. I think maybe it's a cop out to say that it would always be timely. So I'm happy to say that with the caveat that I know I understand that people will read this and are going to be bringing their own troubles and worries and fears, their own histories, their own uh uh I mean, let's, to be again, like to be very honest, like people bring their own prejudices to books, people bring their own thoughts and feelings, people bring their own opinions. People are going to not replace the lens of their worldview with the book, but they are going to look at the book through their own lens of worldview. So like I will not be surprised if somebody reads this and again, right? Like it's not the kind of thing where I could ever say, you know, I think I could objectively be like, oh no, well that wasn't correct or that's not what I intended or whatever. Like people will bring whatever they want to this book. And part of my job as the writer is to make peace with the fact that like not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone's going to see it the way I see it. Not everybody's going to see the world through it differently. And that's okay, even if what they see or think or believe are not things that I would agree with or whatever. But I would hope that at the end of the day, people could come away from this and say, like, like I mean, I can't help but think of not that I'm comparing myself to the Superman movie that came out recently, but I like to think that like, yeah, it's a story that argues people are people. Everybody deserves dignity. Everybody deserves a good life of, I mean, the Fox says it at the end, right? Like every clay and cloudling, every human being that has been made in this world deserves a life of love, dignity, respect, and kindness. And that's my worldview. I believe that entirely. And I would hope that if people finish this book, the one thing they could at least take away from it is, hey, it's bad to oppress people. It's bad to it's always a bad thing. I'm very fortunate to have N.K. Jemisin was one of my mentors and teachers at Clarion. I'm very, very happy to say that she's one of my friends. She blurred the book. She's always been a great supporter. But to use her words, like she said it nearly perfectly in The Obelisk Gate, which was book two of her um, trilogy after fifth season. No, there's no voting on who gets to be people. And that's the hope, right? Is that if you can finish, is that I hope people can finish this book and be like, well, I didn't like it, but I do understand that you shouldn't oppress people, or you shouldn't be a fascist, or you shouldn't, uh, you know, condone violence against, like, there, there is a part of it that's like, if you read this book and come away and think, wow, those or annoying people really had it coming, you might want to rethink that. You might want to look in the mirror for a minute there, but I think, I mean, to speak to the present moment, I saw Lauren Groff, the writer. It was her birthday the other day, and she had made an Instagram video, and in it she had said something like, I still believe in art's ability to help us connect with each other and see each other, and recognize the humanity in each other. And that's, I mean, ultimately that's the hope of anything that I would write. But I think especially in something like this, at a time when it's coming out, if you read it and you love it, and it's just this place to escape to, and it's a world of foxes and spiders and a dance contest with a gibbon and a koala that sleeps for a century, and you love the whimsy of it, awesome. I want that for you. If you come away from it and you're like, well, goddamn, it's really like the world we live in now, but it's nice to see that we're able, there was some uh reckoning here and there's some victory here. Great. And that's all I could ask is that if someone decides to read it and spends time with Nessie and the Fox, uh, I hope they come away from it, if at the very, very least, hopefully feeling a little less alone in understanding that, yeah, wow, it sucks to maybe be somebody who feels like they can't do much. But in that feeling less alone, maybe feel a bit more empowered to do what you can. Reach out to a mutual aid network, volunteer at a local shelter or community organization, or your local, like, trans youth center, like, help out wherever you can. If you feel empowered to do that, then great, that's awesome. But you know,
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's very tough to look back and be like, oh, I started writing this in 2018, and how do you fight monsters, and how do you take back your story when others seem really, really pointedly trying to tell it for you, you know? So anyway, I'm trying not to be too depressing. I promise book two has a dragon if we get to book two.
I do hope we get to book two. But I think you're absolutely right. And, I think the overlap with Superman is perhaps like I've seen the word hope core or hope punk thrown around with regard
Mm.
to both that movie and your novella. And I think that forgive me, listeners, if you have not seen Superman, this is not like a big spoiler, but like I think that that movie shows that, like, yes, it's important to save the world or save the city, but it's also important to save the squirrel, and like that's what you can do. Like,
Yeah, no, I love that moment. I love that moment because it's 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 a it's an emphasis on the value of life. That is a quote pulled from an essay by Emmett Asher Perrin over at Reactor. Go read it if you haven't read it. They're awesome. And it's all about the defense of, like, we love Superman because Superman is too corny, is too much, loves everybody, and wants to save every squirrel, right? Like, it is this emphasis on life above all other things. And like, yeah, I mean, that's very kind of you to say. I really appreciate you saying that, and that's the hope. I mean, that literally, that's the hope, right? Is like somebody, when in this review by Saya over at Every Book a Doorway, she says, like, this is a very hope punk book, and it's not something I was thinking of when I was writing it, but I think as I was writing it over the last couple of years, like, as I was really editing into its final shape, it became important for me to, like, find hope. It became important to, all those little moments that aren't going to save you. They are not going to suddenly free people, and it's not going to suddenly make the ephemeral fire around you go out. It's not going to suddenly, um, you know, you're not going to, like, grow 9 feet tall and have magical powers and, like, fly out of there. But it's important to have things to rally around, to care for each other and love each other. Um, like, one of my favorite scenes writing, and this was a scene that came in at the very, very end, but one that I'm so glad that I, like, worked towards. Uh, no spoilers, but you will understand. The red bean tart. This is there's a plot pivotal red bean tart, red bean custard, and there's a line in there about uh, when if something gives hope, it doesn't matter the size of it. What matters is that it's there. And if this book can give any reader a little sense of comfort and hope, then boy howdy, will I have believed I've done my job 1,000 times over. So
That's beautiful. I started to call my cat last night Red Bean Tart. It's just like I was like, that's a great cat name. That's good.
that's very sweet. I love it.
Thank you so much for your time, for the interview, and for sharing this book with me. I feel like it was like, it is silly and goofy, but it's also like nourishing, and it was a very, very, very good read. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. Thank you, because it's you never know. You never know. You write something and then you put it out into the world and you hope you've done a good job. And yeah, and not everyone's gonna like it. It's been very interesting to I I come from publicity, so I am so used to telling authors don't read your reviews, and I'm so used to breaking that rule for myself over and over and over again. So it's been totally valid to like read reviews. And honestly, most of the negative reviews have been like, it's too short. And I'm like, hey, I'm with you. So, maybe we'll get a sequel out there that's a little longer. I started working on it a few nights ago. Um, but yes, but I'm really glad. That's really awesome. Thank you. And yeah, if we get that sequel, we do follow up to see what that salt dragon wants at the end of book one. So we'll see.
Excellent.
We'll see what her whole deal is.
Oh, I really want that. So listeners, pick up this book because you need to help make this happen for me, for you, for us. We all need to see this. By the time that you listen to this episode, it will be out in the world. So you can head to your favorite bookstore or website or library. Do you have a place that you like to send people for books? Do you have a fave spot?
Yeah, sure. And by the way, if I'll tell you after we finish recording what book two might be. But yes, I love to send folks to, I mean, Bookshop is a great place online. Really, really appreciate it. I'm doing signed copies with Oblong Books up in Rhinebeck, New York, just like an hour-ish north of me. And if you are totally agnostic, if you don't have an independent store that you love or anything, but you have like a local Barnes& and Noble, B&N's always good. Barnes& and Noble is getting very weird about pre-orders and orders these days, but like so they're always like, who's ordering what? So it's nice to be like, yeah, go support your local B&N if that helps. But yeah, otherwise Bookshop through your local indie, always a pleasure.
Nice. All right, so that's your homework, listeners. Get on it. And thank you for joining us. It is time to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.